いねえな。どこに行っちまったんだろうな。
Okay. Now, before I forget, there was something that I wanted to mention regarding Umineko. And that was something that I completely forgot about until very recently. And it's this it's a psychological, what was it? Was it theory? No, not theory. Idea? Let me double check. It was a psychological phenomenon. That's what it's called. Um and it's known as the Tinkerbell effect, which some of you might know what that is, but just in case you don't, it basically means it's based on Tinkerbell from, Peter Pan. I believe the audience has to believe that she exists or that she's real, and if they don't, she dies. So like the only reason she's able to live is because the audience is like, "No, Tinkerbell, you're right there. You're so cute, whatever," right? So she gets her attention and she's like, full of energy again. Um but yeah, it's basically when something is made true because you believe it to be so. For example, like in real life we'd have like money, right? Like money exists. Money is like you can hold a bill, right? Like like legal tender. You can hold coins, you can hold bills, but that's all they are, right? Like coins are just smelted metal shaped into a little circle. Bills are just pieces of paper with an image on it. But because we believe them to have power, in this case the ability to purchase, so purchasing power, they have they have the ability to procure things for you. So if you go to a market and you want to buy an apple, you can pay with coins, you can pay with a dollar bill, or with a bill, a piece of paper. And the other person sees the dollar bill or the coins and they're like, "Yeah, this is equal to money that I want for this app that I would trade this apple for." And then they give you the apple. Right? The same thing applies, I think so far, to Beatrice, where everyone, quote unquote, because people believe in her, because people in this manner, because someone like Kinzo believes so strongly in her that she exists, she, quote unquote, becomes manifested into the character's world, right? And this happens in every dimension that she's in. So, like, we saw Shard 1, quote unquote, right? That was chapter 1. We saw the first shard or a shard that she visited where Battler defied her. And he dies at the end, right? He dies along with everyone else on the island. In Shard 2, the same thing is more than likely going to happen. Like, Battler's not solving this mystery. I'm just along for the ride. Battler isn't doing shit this chapter. I'm willing to bet maybe he discovers one thing that he will implement in chapter 3, and it won't pay off until chapter 7. Like, that's just how Ryukishi's writing is. There's 8 chapters for Umineko, if I recall. So I'm not expecting anything huge to happen here. But that's like in one shard, right? This is chapter 2, this is shard number 2. Assuming we are going through different shards, there's an infinite number of them. And in all those infinite number of shards, Beatrice is farming, or harvesting this energy of belief, and thus she is able to exist because of her myth. At least that's what I think. Maybe. Where, again, like you have all these shards, and in all of them, there is some belief in Beatrice, so because of that, she does have her powers. And it isn't until Battler is able to stop her that he's able to nip it in the bud by literally, I don't know, I don't know what he's going to do. But assuming when we reach the end, the Beatrice that he defeats, because he's going to, we believe in Battler, the Beatrice that he defeats is going to be like the quote-unquote main one. And just like how Rika had to try over and over again in order to remember who she was, that will happen to Beatrice. Well, she will lose in a shard and then be probably lost forever in time and space. She'll be banished to a different dimension or something. I don't know. But that's my guess. That's something I'm assuming might happen. But again, that's regarding the Tinkerbell effect, which I had completely forgotten about until a week ago. Anyway, back to Battler.
使用人室も厨房も空っぽだぜ。一体どうしちまったってんだ。
So what's funny about this? Not Maria crying, but if you read this on the surface level, she's quote unquote crying for her mother. And you might think, oh, okay, so she's like, you know, she misses her mom or whatever. But then she says the second part. The letter I got from Beato, give it back. Give it back. Wah, right? She's crying. So she doesn't care what the fuck happened to her mom. She just knows her mom took her letter. And she wants her letter back. Because remember, if you just if you would have like gone when you get to the scene, she starts crying and then says, "Mama, where's Mama?" And you're like, "Oh man, she really like she probably thought her mom got killed, or she woke up and her mom wasn't there, so she's scared." And then she says, "My letter," and you're like, "Oh." And then you remember in chapter 1 where they're like, "You can't look, Maria. Your mom is dead." She's like, "So who cares? I'm watching Doraemon on TV right now. Can you shut up?" Like he's pulling out like a little machine out of his little front pocket dimension. Like that's all she cared about. So it's fucking terrible.
弱ったね。バトラ君、本当にローザおばさんだったのかい？
まあ、俺も寝ぼけてたから自信はねえんだが、明け方にローザおばさんが入ってきて、マリアの手提げカバンを漁ってるような気がしたんだよ。俺はてっきりマリアの手提げに歯磨きのチューブでも入ってるんじゃないかなんて思って寝ぼけてて。
なんで歯磨きのチューブがマリアの手提げに入ってるんだよ。
Well, I mean, she's got like she had candy in there. She's got books or like a notebook with like scribblings of the occult. She probably has like plastic spiders in there. Like her having like a toothpaste tube isn't too out of the question, you know?
寝ぼけて夢でも見たに決まってんぜ。
Battler vaguely remembered Rosa entering the cousin's room. Also, when Maria woke up before the rest of them, she'd started rampaging around saying that someone had opened the envelope she'd been keeping safe. Putting two and two together, they figured that Rosa had probably come and opened the envelope.
黄金の魔女様の封筒か。中に何が入ってたんだろう。
わからないね。でも、あの封筒はおじいさまが新書に使う後宮家の家紋の入ったものだった。親族会議と無関係なものが入っていたとは考えがたいね。
She hadn't let anyone touch it, but yesterday, Maria had shown that envelope off to Battler and the rest a whole lot. So they remembered it well.
"ジョージの兄貴の言う通りなら相当重要なものらしいが、しかしそんな大事なものをどうして魔女様はマリアに渡したんだろうな。さっぱりだぜ。
Every once in a while, the refreshing morning atmosphere was completely wiped out by the sound of thunder. It was only natural. Since the moment they'd woken up, they hadn't met anyone else. It felt like only they were left, as if the mansion had become an empty husk.
Oi!
Right, or they, you know, stepped into another world or whatever.
誰かいないか？返事してくれよ！
Jessica called out into the hallway and eventually an answer came back. It came from the entrance hall.
聞こえますとも。何かありましたか？
南條先生だ。よかった。この島から 僕たち以外が消えてしまったわけではないようだよ。
南條先生、おはようございます。
Oh, that face she's making is very Ryukishi. Like super Ryukishi for sure. Like that is a smile, like the closed eyes and everything that you'd see on like any Ryukishi character.
すみませんが、うちの親たちとかどこに行ったか知りませんか？
はて、私も今起きてこちらに来たばかりですからな。わかりかねますが、さて。
It was only natural. Nanjo was a guest like the rest of them. He'd come just now to pass the time in the parlor until breakfast.
南條先生、ママがどうか、ママがマリアのお手紙取ったの。
Oh my god. Can you imagine? You just wake up, you hear people calling out, and you're like, "Oh, hey, I'm here. Do you need anything?" And they're like, "Oh no, we just don't know. We just didn't see, the other adults, so we wondered if something happened." It's like, "Yeah, I don't know. I just woke up too." And then you have a 4-foot gremlin come up to you and like tug at your lab coat or at your doctor's robes and be like, "My mom took my letter," and she's fucking crying. Speaking of, the voice actress for Maria, who is the same one that did the voice for Hanyu back in Higurashi, I think half her lines are literally her just crying. Like when she's not being a fucking psychopathic child, she's just crying a lot. Like, do you think when she signed up for this role or when she was chosen by Ryukishi that she was told that, hey, by the way, you're gonna be crying a lot? Like just listening to her cry makes my throat hurt. So it makes me wonder, like, how many times she had to read some lines because she had to cry during them or whatever. Anyway, Maria buried her face in Nanjo's plump stomach, sobbing and crying. Nanjo could do nothing but be bewildered by this ruckus so early in the morning.
誰かかけてくるぜ。ジェシカ、誰か来るぞ。
From down the hallway, they could sense people running hurriedly. Jessica readied her rifle. They saw Golda and Kanon coming towards them. Normally, it would be disgraceful for a servant to run inside the mansion, and yet Battler and the rest didn't even think to question that now. Maria's sobbing had become so unmanageable, they wanted to ask anyone, where Rosa was. But the two servants seemed to have bigger things on their minds than Jessica, who was waving at them. Golda flew into the servants' room, and when Kanon noticed that Nanjo was there, he bowed and approached the doctor at a quick pace before whispering something into his ear.
何ですって、ローザさんが。
はい、ご案内いたしますので、どうかご同行お願いいたします。
わかりました。
Oh no.
こちらへ。
Without saying anything more than that, Kanon finally noticed Jessica and bowed to her, but he wasn't calm. He dashed back to the corridor by which he had come, followed by Nanjo. By looking at how hurried they were, Battler and the rest realized that yes, something really bad had happened. They saw Golda through the door to the servant room, which had been flung open. He was holding the receiver and violently pressing the hook. From that, they realized that he was trying to call a hospital or the police. In any event, he was trying to call someone because a serious emergency had occurred.
行ってみようぜ。
ママ、返して。マリアの手紙返して。それは黄金鏡への招待状なの。
Huh? Give back my letter. It's an invitation to the Golden Land. They didn't know what, but something was happening. Battler and the rest chased after Kanon and Nanjo. And then we realized Kanon had called Dr. Nanjo, but he hadn't called us. So we shouldn't have gone with them. I wonder if Alice regretted her excess curiosity when she chased after that rabbit holding a clock.
母さん、父さん、何があったの？
なんだよこりゃ。趣味が悪いにも程があるじゃねえかよ。命を奪うならそれで十分事足りただろうがよ。なんだよこりゃ。わざわざ殺した後に椅子に座らせて腹裂いて、菓子をわざわざ中に詰め込んだってのかよ。なんだってそんな悪趣味なことをしやがるんだよ。ちくしょうやってくれやがるぜ。最高だよ最高だよ。
皆さんは外へ出られた方がいい。こんな姿を皆さんに見せたいなどと彼らが思うわけがありません。
Nanjo told the children to go outside, but no one listened.
ローザさん、皆さんに言ってください。こんなもの見続けては毒になる。
Rosa regretted her own carelessness. She should have realized that the children would eventually come here. She should have quickly locked up instead of standing around stunned. So the children had come here. They had seen it. Surely, at this very moment, they were having a sight burned into their eyes that was far more grotesque than the shocking meal Rosa had witnessed in her youth. While she hugged Maria, who seemed to be too shocked to show any emotion at this gruesome scene, Rosa cried for them and their parents. The four groaning and crying voices, their sadness, continue to echo in a place that should have known God's love.
クソ野郎がまたかよ。またこんな殺人を。しかも今度もやたらと凝った最高にふざけた殺し方をしやがって。
わらわはそんな嘆きより感謝の言葉が聞きたかったぞ。
Wait, I was about to say, so it looks like he stepped out from that moment in time or something to address Beatrice directly, and then he did.
感謝と言ったがこのクソババア。てめえ耳がいかれてやがるってんなら俺が両の耳を引き裂いてよく聞こえるようにしてやるぜ。なんで俺がこの最高にいかれた殺し方にありがとうございますベアトリーチェ様なんて言わなければならねえんだ。ぶっ殺してやる。
前回のゲームでお前は自分の親の死に顔が見られないと嘆いたな。
Oh my god.
だから残したぞ。しっかり残した。よく拝んでおけ。間違いなく父親たちが殺されたことを。
What a fucking bitch. Holy shit. Look at how smug she looks. Oh my god. What a fucking what a fucking face. Look at her fangs.
そうかよ。そいつはサービス満点だぜ。気に入った。俺はてめえの息の根を止めたら顔面耕してやろうと誓ってたが、そいつは取り消してやるぜ。 てめえの腹渡を引きずり出してやる。
感情に任せて思考を止めるな。
I'm sorry, what kind of face is this? The Beatrice face. She looks like a fetal alcohol baby for a moment. Holy shit. Anyway.
すでにわらわのゲームは始まっておるのだぞ。わらわは今回は綺麗に死体を残すことに決めた。なぜだかわかるか？前回のゲームでそなたがわらわの存在を否定するとき、こう考えて否定したであろう。顔面が潰され遺体の身元が確認できぬ。だから身代わりの死体を用意してアリバイを作った可能性が否定できない。その可能性が排除できない限り人間犯人説は維持できる。
なんだと？
さあバトラー、南條に検視を任せてよいのか？ミステリーの古典では検視の医者がグルというのが伝統なのだろう。
She's right, actually. I haven't read many mystery novels in my life because I tend to get bored by them, but yeah, in general, in some of them, the Doctor is a possible acquaintance. Or sometimes, sorry, accomplice, not acquaintance. He might be a possible accomplice, because usually only they know how to perform whatever bullshit they're thinking of in their minds when they accuse them. But look at Beatrice and her fucking smug face. Holy shit.
なら南條に検視を任せるな。そなたが自らするがよい。間違いなく6人の死体が当人で、死んだふりなどでなく本当に死んでいることを十分に確認するがいい。お前の父親が母親が腹を裂かれて臓物を引きずり出されて殺されていることを腹に手を入れてその手触りで確認するがいい。
泣かねえ。
I won't cry. And then a sprite. Oh my god.
ちくしょう、ちくしょう。泣かねえぞ、俺は。
Battler suddenly yelled. His tears were still dripping down, but as though scolding himself for being a sissy, he slapped his face hard several times with both hands. Even so, the tears wouldn't stop. However, he felt a hot blaze in both his eyes.
これだけの上等を決めやがった野郎に借りはがっちり返させていただくぜ。なら泣く時じゃねえ。自分のすべきことを考えろ。ああ、ダメだぜ、全然ダメだ。涙を流す暇があったら考えろ。涙腺なんかひるませる時じゃねえ。
Rather than genuine anger, maybe it was more of an evasive anger to blot out his sadness. However, it gave a little courage to George and Jessica, who'd been crushed by the sadness.
そうだね。僕たちが泣いても起こってしまった現実は変わらない。
くそくそじゃあどうすりゃいいんだ。私は父さんと母さんのために何をすればいいんだよ。
ローザ様。
I have returned. The voice line didn't play for some reason.
郷田さん、警察はどうでしたか。対応の指示はいつ頃来られそうだと言っていましたか。
それが電話が故障のようでして、非常用の無線機も試してはみたのですが、その天候のせいでしょうか、こちらも通じず。
なんですって。じゃあ警察に連絡がつかないということなの？あいつだ。あいつが電話線とかに採掘して警察に電話ができないようにしたんだ。
She heard that the phones had broken down. Jessica immediately decided that it was the work of that mysterious guest. Her eyes were bright red after so much crying, and they began to grow even redder with rage.
もうキロの余地なんかねえぜ。全てが分かってる。そうだと分かる。父さんと母さんを殺したのは誰だ？決まってるぜ。あいつだ。昨日来たとかいう魔女様に決まってる。襟首ひねり上げてやるぜ。畜生畜生畜生。ジェシカちゃん、お待ちなさい。ゴーダさん、カノク、行って。はい。
お嬢様、お待ちを。
Covering her uncontrollable sadness with anger, Jessica ran outside, torn apart by emotion. Thinking about it hastily, maybe the mystery guest who'd arrived yesterday, Beatrice, was suspicious. However, in that instant, there was absolutely no proof that she was the culprit. At this moment, she's just another guest, and no more, no less. So, Rosa, making an adult decision, was forced to stop Jessica in her rash rampage. Golda and Kennen picked up on this immediately and chased after her.
誰にも招かれなかった客人、ベアトリーチェが犯人なんだろうか。
ジェシカの気持ちもわかる。そう思い込みたい気持ちは誰でもいいから犯人ってことにして横っ面をぶっ飛ばしてやりたい気持ちがある。だがその前にはっきりと理解する必要がある。ベアトリーチェって何者なんだ？俺は顔すら見てねえぜ。
顔ならお屋敷に大きな肖像画で飾られてたよ。あれだけ見てまだ覚えられないのかな。
Wait a minute. Sorry, I just thought of something for a moment. This might sound silly, but what if this is talking about her portrait? This part of the riddle. Let me double check her design a little bit. I'd have to look at the classic at the old painting. But what if somehow the Sweetfish River is something else? Her hometown could be the painting. The Sweetfish River could be something in the painting that you have to follow with your eyes. And there is the key. The village could be literally anything on the painting or in the portrait. It could be, I don't know, the ruffles on her shirt. It could be, or on her blouse. It could be the wrinkles on her dress. And the shore could be some part of the dress. It could be the bottom. It could be something along those lines. And there sleeps the key to the Golden Land. No, I mean, I'm not saying Beatrice wrote this. It's obviously Kinzo who wrote it. As, well, Beatrice probably dictated it, and Kinzo wrote it. Or she communicated this with him in some way, shape, or form. If I recall, I believe they mentioned Kinzo wrote this, because it's his riddle for the epitaph. It was the contract that he made with Beatrice. So Beatrice doesn't have a physical form, so Kinzo is the one that wrote this. Anyway, back to this. We'll come back to the to that maybe later on by the end.
なんだよマリア、こんな状況で何がおかしいよ。
ベアトリーチェは魔女なんだよ。そして黄金鏡の扉を開くための儀式がいよいよ始まったの。この6人はその生贄なんだよ。さあさあ始まるよ、魔女の宴が。今宵はハロウィン、魔女たちが今こそ祝い集う。マリア、その気持ち悪い声で笑うのをやめなさいっていつも言ってるでしょ。
Remember, kimochiwarui can be creepy, but it can also be like vile, disgusting, horrid, any other synonym like that. It's like, Maria, didn't I always tell you not to laugh in that fucking, like, disgusting voice? The crisp sound of Rosa slapping Maria's cheek echoed through the high ceiling chapel. Oh my god. Ever since it started raining yesterday, no, ever since the island was swallowed by the typhoon, I felt as though something was wrong. It was bright and sunny when I arrived on Rokenjima, but since I'd gotten up early and was sleepy, I took a nap. When I woke up, it had already started raining, and ever since that time, suddenly a mysterious visitor calling herself the Golden Witch Beatrice arrived, and it felt like it was sinking bit by bit into a bizarre world. What the heck happened while I was napping? Am I supposed to believe this island was sealed off inside a different world where common sense doesn't apply? Who is this person called Beatrice? Is some unknown person trying to involve themselves with the inheritance problem, just like our parents were freaking out about at dinner last night? Or is the culprit this witch from the Legend of Gold? Or is the culprit this witch from the Legend of Gold, just like Maria said? Even if we set Jessica's temper aside, given the circumstances, it's probably safe to assume that this visitor person is the most suspicious. But we mustn't make up our minds based on that alone. It's useless, it's all useless. I smacked my face with both my hands again, cooling off my brains before they overloaded, even though it might have been a wasted effort.
これはおじい様の封筒。
On a tray piled up with sweets that decorated the table, George Aniki found a Western envelope that had the Yoshiromiya family crest done on it in gold leaf. Shit.
ってことは、それは俺たち宛てってことじゃねえのか。
Sorry. Yeah, Aniki found a Western envelope that had the Yoshiromiya family crest done on it in gold leaf, and it was unopened. Which means it's probably meant for us, right?
親父たちが読んだものだったなら開封されてるはずだぜ。
その推理は正解のようだよ。書いてある。残されし者たちへって書いてあるよ。
それは犯人が残した手紙なの。中身。
I don't think you were here for the last stream when we got to the scene, but right before it, I was able to predict exactly who got murdered. I don't remember what reasoning I had used, but I remember being like, all right, let's go through the characters. Who's probably going to be left alive? And then it came down to either Rosa and like Maria dying, and if it wasn't them, it was going to be everyone here. I don't remember what conclusion I came to because it's been like, for me, it's been a week. For those watching on YouTube, it's been a video. But it's pretty funny that I was able to get it right for some reason. I don't remember what deduction I used for it. But regarding them, I mean, it's different. Like, for example, since they were able to encounter Beatrice, they all had to meet up with her. And I assume right now we're about to read a letter. Or I don't know. They all read a letter before coming to the chapel. And it said something like meet me in the chapel, and that's when they met Beatrice. but I'm not sure why they were chosen specifically, but it's interesting that these 6 got chosen. I assume the main reason for it is so that they could have Rosa as the only real adult in charge, because unlike Natsuhi, Rosa is like the weakest link of the entire family in terms of like authority. Like, even if she is older than Battler, I'm sure if Rosa told him to do, like, to not do something, he wouldn't give a shit. He'd be like, you're not my mom, fuck you. And he'd still do it, right? So I think that's why if Beatrice did this, whomever the killer is, killed these 6 specifically on the first night, to make sure that there's only, to like topple the power balance quite a bit. Because again, besides Kinzo, who is still technically alive, Rosa is the only other person with agency here in terms of like adults. Because if she'd be dead, it'd be up to Jessica technically next in line, but George would probably take the lead along with Battler. Anyway.
兄貴、開けようぜ。
After nodding silently, George broke the seal. A folded letter came out.
読むよ。六軒島へようこそ。後ろ宮家の皆様方。私は金蔵様にお仕えしております。当家顧問錬金術師のベアトリーチェと申します。
That letter really was a joke. This Beatrice, who called herself the family alchemist, had announced that she was collecting the gold she'd lent grandfather, along with interest. And that interest was everything grandfather had created. Since this tragedy was right before our eyes as this paragraph was being read aloud, it clearly wasn't referring just to the wealth that grandfather had built up. It was literal. Everything that grandfather had created. In other words, all of grandfather's descendants were included in the interest.
ふざけやがって。なんてめちゃくちゃな契約だ。黄金の利子は命だってのかよ。そんなのまるで悪魔の契約じゃねえかよ。それで魔女気取りってわけか。笑わせやがるぜ。
Now, I don't want to cut too much into this, because it's a very tense scene. But Ryukishi just kind of snuck something in there that you probably are supposed to forget about. But right here, everything that grandfather had created, in other words, all of grandfather's descendants were included in the interest. So that's the thing, right? If we were to look at the characters, everyone here, with the exclusion of Kirie, would be considered interest. Or should be considered interest. Oh, actually, along with Hideyoshi and Natsuhi. Sorry. These 3 should not be considered interest. They have Ushiromiya as their name, but that is a name that they adopted to be in the family. What would count as interest would be Klaus, Eva, Rudolph, Rosa, Maria, Battler, George, and Jessica. And then technically, Kumasawa, Goda, Kanon, Shannon, and Genji, because they are property, furniture, of Kinzo. So these 3 should not be included in this at all. They should not be affected by the game at all. The other thing to note is a bit ago when Beatrice was having a conversation with Battler, is that she specifically said, your mom and dad have both been killed. She specifically called Kirie Battler's mom. And Battler has stated multiple times that even though he views Kirie as a motherly figure, as in someone to accompany his father, as a romantic partner, he's never viewed her as a mother. And he would find that to be very fucking weird, which is why he never calls her mom or anything like that. So Beatrice, I don't think knows, well, if she was as omnipotent as she claims she is, she would know this, if that makes sense. She probably just assumed that Kirie is Battler's mom. Or, well, the killer would assume that she's Battler's mom, because Kirie would be sitting close to or be constantly near Rudolph, just like how just like how Hideyoshi and of course Natsuhi were constantly close to Chaos and Eva. So this is like a big hint, I'm pretty sure, that whomever the killer is, if it was Beatrice, would know this and would know not to collect these three. These three should not be a part of the roulette at all. One sec. Yeah, everything of the Ushiromiya family is interest. They are not technically Ushiromiya, so they wouldn't count as that specifically. Yeah, this is the same one from last time. Yeah, here's the special clause. So we know of this, and then if someone's able to discover the hidden gold of this contract, she abandons these rights. One sec. Key's already publicly displayed. Yeah. Anyone that can read. So that is something to keep keep in the back of your mind. Yeah, we can review the tips in chapter 1 from the main menu. We were doing that. I talked about my nightmare that I had where that I accidentally somehow managed to delete my data or whatever. No, that I got spoiled on future ones, because like chapter 1 is in the bottom or whatever, like below exit, and then chapter 2 is right next to it, and then like chapter 3 was there, and I accidentally clicked on it and it showed me something that I wasn't supposed to see. But anyway, because yeah, the roulette is supposed to claim how many people? Once again, it was let's see, 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 of them. Or was it 13 victims? I think it was 13 victims overall. So it'd be 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14, and if we count Nanjo as the family physician, vaguely technically he could count as well. So I'm pretty sure this is a big hint. So where am I going with this? My point with this is, if it was Beatrice performing these murders, she would know exactly who to kill. She would know, like, it's like, imagine you have like you're putting names into a hat. She would read them all before putting them in, and she would know, okay, Kirie wouldn't count, Hideyoshi wouldn't count, Natsuhi wouldn't count, Nanjo wouldn't count, right? And counting everyone else, right? The servants and the rest of the family that do not include spouses, they would be targets for the key. Because Kinzo knows specifically that he is a target. He could be chosen at any moment. And that's why you bring so many people to have more possible targets, right? For example, if Rosa hadn't shown up, then technically they'd be down by one person and the ritual couldn't be completed. So, my point is, Beatrice knows who needs to die, but whomever's actually committing the murders is kind of guessing. They're just using deduction, like, oh, well, I mean, this is Ushiromiya Kirie, so she's obviously related to, you know, Rudolph in some way, shape, or form by being her partner, right? Or his partner. So she's obviously part of the Ushiromiya family, so technically she could count for the ritual. But I'm willing to bet that does not. It does not. I'm willing to bet the door to the Golden Land didn't open in the first chapter. And if anything, everyone just died. And Beatrice just kind of took everyone, quote unquote, to purgatory instead of the Golden Land. In other words, whomever's actually doing these murders, acting on behalf of Beatrice, has no idea what the fuck they're doing. Anyway, back to this. Now that I ramble for like 15 minutes.
特別条項。ただし、隠された契約の黄金を暴いた者が現れた時、ベアトリーチェはこの権利を全て永遠に放棄しなければならない。黄金の隠し場所については、すでに金蔵様が私の肖像画の下に碑文にて公示されております。つまりこういうことだね。もしこの殺人が李氏の回収行為だというなら、それを止める条件としておじい様に与えた隠し黄金を探し出してみろと。そしてその秘密は例の肖像画の碑文に隠されているとも言ってる。
Also, again, not to deter too much from the main point, this is weird. Why would Beatrice refer to Kinzo as Kinzo-sama specifically? Why would she use that honorific for Kinzo? I mean, if you watch anime, I'm sure you know what it means, but essentially it's someone with a very high status. You usually use that to refer to, say, I don't know, the head of a literal family, but someone who is like rich and powerful and wealthy. So let's say someone who lives in a mansion who also happens to be like, you know, the father of the family or the grandfather that's visiting. It could also be used to, if you really want to be like, I don't know, ironic, you could say that a CEO can be referred to as Kinzo-sama, for example. Normally people wouldn't fucking do that. Maybe his servants would. But my point is, I don't think Beatrice has ever referred to Kinzo as Kinzo-sama verbally. Doesn't she normally say like that old man is like hallucinating again? That old man is crying again. She doesn't ever call him by name. So that is a good question. Who wrote this contract specifically? So it must have been someone else, someone working on behalf of either both Beatrice and Kinzo, or a mediator, or, for lack of a better word, a lawyer of some kind, specifically addressing Kinzo like this. It's someone who is familiar enough with Kinzo and reveres him enough to refer to him as Kinzo-sama. So it could be that Genji wrote this. Genji is the oldest like servant that they have. It wouldn't have been Shannon, right? It wouldn't have been Kanon. It wouldn't have been Goda. There is a chance that it could have been Kumasawa. But someone must have been there since the very beginning. In this case, it's probably Genji, because he served Kinzo longer than any other, and is a person most trusted by that old man. I don't think he would trust Kumasawa to write this contract. So if, like, just imagine Kinzo in front of his fucking Ouija board, like telling Genji what to write. So he probably said something like, where is it? Here, for example, like on this part. So he's probably telling him to write that Beatrice has served him for many years in accordance to their contract, but on this day, Kinzo has announced the final suspension, and while writing Kinzo, like the kanji for his name, he probably added sama, like out of habit, because he's addressing someone whom he respects. Anyway, I'm thinking too much about this, but let's continue. Sorry for derailing this
つまり
shit.
こいつは魔女様の挑戦状ってわけか。黄金の隠し場所を記した暗号文を解けるものなら解いてみろと。そしてそれができなきゃ利子の回収をこの後も着々と進めていきますと、そう言ってぶっ殺してやる上等だ。
バトラ君、これ
The table was covered with sweets. So even though those things were right out in the open, we just assumed they were sweets too. I mean, come on. You see them a lot, right? You know those boxes of chocolate shaped like golden ingots?
こりゃお菓子の箱じゃねえぞ。本物だ。こりゃ本物の金塊だ。
片翼のわしの紋章が刻印されてる。前に母さんが話してたのを聞いた。これはおじいさまの黄金伝説の金塊だよ。
Gold ingots weighing a full 10 kilograms. A whole 3 of them were piled up in the very center of the table. It was where a cake would be placed if it was a birthday party. In other words, this was without a doubt the birthday cake of the party known as the family conference.
これが本当に純度49のインゴットだったなら、6000万円くらいの価値はある。
バカ野郎、安すぎる。俺たちの親が6人も殺されて、そこに積まれた黄金がたったの6000万円だと。バカにするんじゃね
え。さあ始まったね、ベアトリーチェ。どうせこの謎は誰にも解けないよ。だから絶対にベアとの勝ち。早く黄金鏡への扉を開いて、そしてマリアを連れてって。
The clock didn't move. Okay.
お嬢様、どうか気をお静めください。
So here, before we continue, let's talk a little bit more about that scene. Just a tiny bit. Normally I leave this for the end of stream, but it's just a very tiny complaint. And that is, the way the scene progressed was a little too quick, in my opinion. What do I mean by that? So, in general, whenever you have a Ryukishi scene that's very impactful, just like when the first murder happened in the first chapter, for example, we got a lot more, I don't know, like, just more descriptions, of what was going on. For example, like when Battler tried to rush in, we were told, like, Battler rushed, like, pushed past everyone. He opened, like, he got into the fucking shed or whatever, like that outside room, and then like he freaked the fuck out. Like they said that it said that he saw the bodies, and that started freaking him out, and he started like screaming, all that shit. Here, we didn't get any of that, so it felt a little rushed. By that I mean, if you remember when Rosa first walked in, like, she opened the door and she's like, why are they all sitting at a table? Like, what's going on? And she slowly walks closer and closer, and as they come closer into view, she's able to realize oh my god, it's them. They're all, it really is them. Like, she's able to kind of recognize the corpses or the bodies from a distance, and as she gets closer, she notices the blood, she notices the candy, the soda, all that shit, like all the Pepsi cans on the floor. And then she's able to see, once she's like pretty fucking close, like I assume at the front row, right? At the front row of all the pews, she's able to see all the corpses with their guts hanging out. When Battler came in, or when the children came into the chapel, all we heard was like a scream. We didn't hear, like, they didn't mention like the kids ran up the door, like ran through the middle part of like the little the middle row, and you didn't hear like their footsteps, right? It kind of just cut to Jessica screaming, which I get, but it felt a little rushed, if that makes sense. Like it kind of fucked with the pacing a tiny bit. Anyway, that's like the only real complaint I have about that scene. That and the other thing involving Battler, like when he talked to Beatrice, like I'm not sure what's going on here. And I mean, that's part of the mystery. I don't know if it's Battler in the other tea room, right? In the witch's tea room, like he's in that pocket dimension with Beatrice, and Frederica, and they're both watching like what's going on in this shard, like through a crystal ball, for example. And it's Battler that's like watching this shit happen, like Battler Prime, or the original Battler from the first shard. He's watching all this shit happen through that crystal ball, and he's telling Beatrice like, what the fuck is your problem? Because she's only showing him like the same thing we're seeing as the reader, and technically we are Battler, right? Because if that's the case, like the Battler that's here technically should know everything that's about to happen. So I'm not sure if he's just playing it off as like trying not to seem weird about it. Like if you have like, remember how Rika mentioned that in the past she's tried to be omnipotent or reveal her omnipotence to those in the village, and when she would, nothing would work out. Things would be really, like, they would think she was creepy. So imagine if Battler all of a sudden is like, okay, yeah, the witch did this, we need to now solve the epitaph. Here's the epitaph, let's try to figure it out. Everyone's gonna be like, why aren't you crying because your dad was killed? Because Kiria died. Why aren't you crying about this? Why are you so nonchalant about this? And then they probably all turn on him or something, right? Like, just imagine. So, like, it's either Battler is omnipotent to a degree, as in he knows what happened in the first shard, and he's trying to play it off as just internal, like, knowledge that he keeps to himself so that he doesn't reveal that to everyone else, or I don't fucking know. It's just it's weird the way it was handled, how we swapped to Battler in the tea room back to normal Battler. So right now, like, that's what's going through my head. I'm trying to figure out, like, how much does this Battler know, and what does he know? If that makes sense. Anyway, sorry again for rambling, but
誰が犯人かはまだわかりませんぞ。それにベアトリーチェ様は親方様の大切な賓客です。
だからなんだってんだ。本人の胸ぐらひねり上げてやれば白状するに決まってるぜ。目を見ればわかるんだよ。私が見破ってやる。何が魔女だ、ベアトリーチェだ。化けの皮を剥いでやる。
Jessica never stopped moving. Golda and Kanon chased after her, doing their best to convince her to stop. But Jessica never lent them an ear. Eventually, the witch's VIP room came into view. This VIP room was always sealed and never used. No matter what kind of guest came, Kinzo wouldn't let them in there. And yet, the servants were always made to clean this room so that it could be used at any time. So the servants had started calling this room the witch's VIP room, after their second shapeless master. Jessica knew about this too, and she couldn't forgive the arrogance of the one who called herself a witch by staying in that room. The Golden Witch was just a fairy tale. Come on, a witch? To Jessica, she was nothing more or less than the murderer who had brutally killed her parents. Question her, hear her pitiful excuses, make her splutter in pain, gasp in anguish. No matter how hard she pretends to be a witch, I'll teach her that she's just a stinking, sweaty human. As Jessica yelled with all of her strength, she hit the door to the VIP room. It definitely wasn't a knock. That sound was the beating of her anger's hammer, as if she was determined to break the door down if it wasn't opened.
開けろよベアトリーチェ出てこい聞こえてるんだろここを開けろ
There was no answer. Jessica grabbed the doorknob without any reservation, but she felt the resistance of the lock. She turned around to look at the two servants and spoke.
ここマスターキーで開くんでしょ開けて
お嬢様、それは大変な失礼にあたります。
Although Golda was flustered, he still tried to somehow calm Jessica's anger. After hanging his head silently for a while, Kanon pulled a master key from his jacket pocket.
カノンさん、いいんですか？
もしおられたなら無礼になるのは承知です。それにもしベアトリーチェ様が何の関係もないというならそれを僕たちに釈明して納得させればいい。
そうだぜその借りるぜ
Jessica snatched the master key from Kanon's hand and violently shoved it into the keyhole. Immediately, there was a small sound and she felt the lock click. Then, without asking permission, she flung the door open.
ベアトリーチェどこだ出てこい
But the room was empty. Just kidding. Jessica rudely stepped into the room. The witch wasn't anywhere to be seen, I knew it.
くそったねいねえぜどこ行きやがった
お姿がありませんね。
Jessica, thinking she might be hiding somewhere inside the room, peeked behind the curtains and under the bed, but she couldn't find anyone. However, there definitely were signs that the bed had been used, and although it was only a vague sense, the atmosphere in the room felt a little soft. It wasn't like the hard atmosphere of a place normally devoid of people, like the chapel. You could definitely tell that someone had spent the night in this room. But she could not be seen, because without it, so-and-so cannot be seen. In reality, neither Jessica nor Golda had met Beatrice. They had only been told by those who had met her that she looked like a double of the character in that portrait. So they were doubtful about what her face really looked like. However, Kanon alone had met her. He understood what kind of being that witch was, what kind of personality she had. So he knew that forcing their way in here in search for her definitely wouldn't work out. So she must be watching us bitterly, flail about in vain from somewhere sneering at us. She's that kind of person. Because he was looking at things that way, Kanon was also the first to find it. The other two were concentrating on finding the shadow of a person so they didn't notice. A letter. Of course. Near a water jug on the side table, there was a single sheet of letter paper. On it was a short message, and nearby was a fountain pen, which had probably been used to write it. Kanon had already come to understand the witch. After finding the corpses, they'd be overcome by rage and barge in here only to find no one, so of course the witch would mock them. You can't mock someone unless they know they're being mocked. So, in other words, that's what this must be.
お嬢様、ここに何か書かれています。
書かれてるってなんだ
Jessica dashed over and violently snatched the piece of paper away. She probably wasn't trying to be violent. She just couldn't control her strength right now.
だとなめやがって
As soon as she read the message, Jessica went into a wild rage, crumpled the paper, and threw it. Then she grabbed a light stand by the bedside and violently swung it around, mercilessly hitting the walls and furniture with it. Oh my god. The light bulbs all shattered at once, and the fragments were scattered across the room.
お嬢様、気をお怪我をなさいます。
離せよ。畜生畜生。出てきやがれベアトリーチェ。よくも父さんと母さんを。そんなに私が怖いかよ。殺してやる。殺してやる。ぶっ殺してやるから姿を現しやがれ。だから離せって言ってんだろ。くそー。
This was written on the paper.
私がぬくぬくとここであなたが飛び込んでくるのを待ちぼうけるとでも？知的な夜に粗暴なるあなたは似合わない。こんな間抜けに育てた親はどんな顔？見たよ。本当にそっくりな間抜け面。今はお菓子の国でお腹いっぱい。
It was the sort of thing that the witch would write. It meant she'd predicted that one of the children who'd lost their parents would come running in here. If she's hiding somewhere in this room, she must be rolling around laughing now. The witch was that kind of person. She'd sneer at people's misfortune, using it to stave off the boredom of 1,000 years.
これはお渡しください。お怪我をなさいますと申し上げております。
離せって言ってんだよ。くそくそ。
Golda snatched away the light stand Jessica had been holding. After all, if she kept swinging it around, she might end up smashing it against something which would cause serious injury. To Golda's eyes, Jessica probably looked mad with rage, burning herself up with the flames of anger. But Kanon's eyes saw it differently. Those were probably tears of sadness hidden by rage. So, when the light stand was taken from Jessica, when she started crying on the floor, scratching at the carpet almost as though she was groveling, Golda was surprised, but Kanon was not. Of course, she had lost her means of crying by lashing out in rage. Considering that she was a daughter of the Ushiromiya head family, she was in a very shabby state. She scratched at the carpet with her fingernails, and even her feet were scratching. Jessica cried very, very hard. Because if she didn't, her rage would start building up again and swallow her up. But over and over again, she remembered that humiliating message. I can only imagine what the parents who raised you to be such a moron must have looked like.
私なんかとは違う。本当に頭が良かった。歩けなんかじゃない。取り消せ。取り消せ。
Oh right, I saw them, and they looked just as moronic as you. Now their bellies are full in the land of sweets.
殺してやる。殺してやる。野郎の腹を裂いて同じ目に遭わせてやる。
As Jessica cried and screamed, she triggered an asthma attack. The servants watching over her hurriedly ran up to her and rubbed her back, but that only provoked Jessica's wrath.
だよ。そんなことする暇があったらあいつを探せよ。 し出して私のところに連れてこい。お前らが行かないなら私が探す。そしてこの手で殺してやる。腹を引き裂いてやる。触るんじゃねえぜ。畜生畜生。
Jessica got up unsteadily, and as her asthma continued, she went out into the hallway.
お嬢様、お薬を至急。南條先生をお呼びします。
郷田さん、僕に任せてくれませんか。
Kanon had noticed, Golda, who was vastly separated from her in age, probably couldn't sense the tears in Jessica's heart. Kanon, who had to be the one to support her.
カノンさん、いいのですか。
今のお嬢様には涙を流す時間も必要なのだと思い、ご両親のあんな死に方を目の当たりにしては。
そうですね。
Golda also understood, and he knew that Jessica and Kanon had shared a vague relationship with each other, so he understood everything and left it to Kanon.
わかりました。私はローザ様のところへ戻ります。お嬢様をくれぐれもよろしくお願いしますよ。
はい、お任せを。
Kanon's voice was frail, but he nodded firmly. After looking at his eyes, Golda nodded firmly as well. Golda was a veteran with many years behind him. He'd seen a great number of people in his life, so he knew the vigorous sparkle that could be found in the eyes of those who possess self-control. He had surely seen that in Kanon's eyes, so he would leave this to Kanon. When you think about it, maybe this was the first time Golda had ever trusted Kanon and relied on him for a job. Jessica, still suffering from her asthma, seemed to be heading towards her room, though she kept leaning against the wall. Kanon followed her wordlessly. If she had asked for a hand, he would have leapt forward and supported her. But until Jessica did that, he chose to hide himself, watching over her from a distance where he could come to her rescue at any time. When people feel their hearts are about to explode from sadness and want to have somebody by their sides, you can bet 10 billion of them would want to turn around and find someone in the place Kanon now stood. As he watched over Jessica from behind. Then, finally, she doubled over in front of the door to her room. The asthma attack had stolen all her strength, and her thoughts had gotten hazy from the lack of oxygen, making it impossible even to stand up again. But right then, Jessica didn't think she wanted someone to lend a hand. She still hadn't been able to overcome the flames of anger. Even if someone had offered her a hand with good intentions, Jessica would have wanted to tear it off right then. She knew how unfair that would be, so she definitely wouldn't ask for help until she overcame the fiery anger burning inside. Jessica had probably lost the willpower to even call for help, but Kanon heard it. He definitely heard it. Kanon definitely heard that voiceless call for help, one shared by the miserable grievers the world round. An endless scream that no one ever seems to hear. Kanon quietly knelt by Jessica's side and wordlessly offered her a shoulder. Though Jessica kept coughing painfully, she accepted it. Unlocked the door to her room and entered.
こちらへ。今、お薬をご用意します。
Jessica often said that when her asthma got serious enough, it hurt so bad that it felt like she'd vomit up her whole stomach. Her face was pale and her gaze wavered. And yet, the coughing continued. Even so, her sadness was probably even stronger. After having her sit on the bed, Kanon took a bronchodilator from a cute little basket on a nearby side table and handed it to her. Jessica sometimes forgot to take her medicine with her. Whenever this seemed to happen, Kanon would take notice and secretly carry around the inhaler from the first aid kit in the servant room, but he hadn't done so today. He scolded himself, as though wondering how he could call himself furniture after failing it to bring it with him on a day like this. Then he remembered the day when he'd used that word and somehow betrayed Jessica's feelings. It jarred Kanon's heart, but he felt it would be indiscreet to think about something like that considering how Jessica felt now. And he locked it up inside the depths of his heart. When she inhaled her medicine, Jessica's wild breathing calmed down bit by bit, and she was finally able to regain her composure, but she'd lost too much strength and willpower to get up from the bed.
大丈夫ですか、お嬢様。
私は大丈夫だぜ。父さんと母さんはダメだけど、私はもうちょっとなきゃ大丈夫だぜ。
Kanon regretted his poor choice of words. Did he really say, "Are you all right" to her? Was he really that clueless of the pain in her heart? This was what made him furniture. This was why he couldn't become human.
廊下におります。ご用がありましたら、すぐにお呼びください。
Kanon understood that she still needed some time to cry alone. He told her to call him at any time, bowed, and tried to leave the room.
何か。
Jessica had spoken up as though she wanted him to stop, so Kanon had stopped. If she asks it, I'll do anything I can to help her. Right now, I'd even become a cane or a chair if it would help ease the pain in her heart. If by doing that, I could make up for the pain I dealt to her heart on that day. For a while, Jessica stared into Kanon's eyes. It was as though her reason for stopping him was something she couldn't put into words. For a while, neither spoke. Jessica broke that silence with a small voice.
ごめん、なんでもないぜ。しばらく一人になりたいって。ロザおばさんに伝えてくれるかな。
一人にはしません。あなたを僕は一人にしない。だから廊下にいます。いつでも呼んでください。
For just an instant, it looked like some kind of hope had flitted into Jessica's eyes. But it was very faint, and disappeared like the first snow on the surface of a river.
ありがとな。しばらくだけ一人で泣かせてくれ。
はい、失礼します。
Kanon bowed once again and closed the door. He thought those words of his would give her some courage, but now it felt as though they'd actually hurt her for some reason. Why? He didn't know. Surely, that was because he was furniture. That was why he couldn't grasp human sadness even now. As Kanon repeatedly questioned himself, he walked down the corridor. He felt like the window at the corridor's end was coolly calling to him.
僕はやっぱり家具でしかないのか。
It was still pouring outside, a dark and gray world. Even on days like this, Shannon would surely see the ocean and know that it was blue. But to my eyes, even if it cleared up, I would only see gray. Until I can understand the blue of the ocean, I'll be nothing but furniture imitating a person.
本当に女心のわからぬやつよ。ああいう時は黙ってそばにいるのが正解だ。だからゆえに貴様は家具なのよ。
貴様。
There shouldn't have been any trace of human life in this corridor. It had been an empty corridor filled with frigid air. Those scoffing words approached Kanon from behind. When he turned around, he saw that witch. That witch who hadn't shown herself when Jessica had searched for her with a rage bordering on madness, and who had left that sneering letter to toy with Jessica.
女の傷つけ方は3つある。特別にわらわが教えてやろう。一つは刃物で傷つける。一つは心で傷つける。そして最後が一番難しく、なのに意識せずして傷つけられる。わかるか？
わかるわけもないし、知りたくもない。
期待を裏切る。だ。女ほど夢見がちな生き物はいない。勝手に夢を見、勝手に傷つく。
Real.
お前のような距離の男が一番女を傷つける。わかるまいな。どれほどジェシカを傷つけてきたか、全く考えが及んでいまい。
Beatrice is like speaking nothing but facts right now. Holy shit.
家具だから。
お前のたわごとに付き合う気は毛頭ない。僕を嘲笑うためだけに姿を現したというのか。
うぬぼれるな家具。貴様ごとき嘲笑うにも足りぬわ。しかしそなたも一人ではそれに値しなくても二人揃えば十分に足りる。若々しき男女の悲運を笑う喜びは何度繰り返しても飽きぬのでな。
なんだと。まさか貴様、お嬢様を。
第二の晩の生贄に寄り添う二人が必要なのでな。お前たち二人は実に都合がよい。
待て、勘違いするな。僕はお嬢様とそういう関係じゃない。第二の晩の生贄にはならない。
だからお前はジェシカを傷つける。だからお前は人間になれぬ。ならばよいだろう。貴様がジェシカを思い人と認めぬならばそれを受け入れてもよい。だがジェシカは殺す。
なぜ？
このバカが。決まっておろうが。殺したらそなたが歪めるだろうその表情が楽しいからの他に何の理由が必要なのか。
What an evil looking sprite. Holy shit. I can only imagine how they drew her for the, or this specific face for the PS3 version. Is holy shit. She looks insane. She looks like a literal rabid dog.
儀式に従い、わらわは気まぐれに13人を生贄とする。だが、それ以上殺してはならないとの決まりはない。わらわが楽しければ幾人でも殺す。だから殺す。わらわを思いっきり笑わせてみせろよ。カグ、カノン。
that time, Kanon definitely heard Jessica scream. When he blinked and looked down the corridor, the witch who'd supposedly been there so nonchalantly just a second ago was gone. At that moment, he was just standing there all alone in the corridor doing nothing, and the person he wanted to protect was asking for help from far away in that direction. It was obvious what he should do. It wasn't logical. It was an electric reflex. Without a trace of hesitation or distraction, there was a person he wanted to protect and she was asking for help. And at that moment, he genuinely wanted the person by her side to be him. When he flew into Jessica's room, the scene that greeted his eyes was a bizarre one. The room had become a fantastical world where a blizzard of golden-colored specks danced, almost as though gold leaf had been scattered inside a snow globe. No, that's not it. I've seen this spectacle before. This isn't gold leaf. It's countless golden butterflies, Beatrice's minions. Jessica was surrounded by countless butterflies waving her hands around frantically, trying to drive them away.
お嬢様
カノン君助けて
Kanon rushed towards Jessica and violently brushed the clouds of butterflies away. The butterflies, which were sickening despite their beauty, surrounded Jessica's face, trying to crawl in through her mouth and nose. Jessica choked violently, almost as though the butterflies were triggering an asthma attack, mocking her. But when Kanon ran towards her, the butterflies stopped attacking and began to dance an elegant rondo around the pair.
カノン君カノン君
大丈夫奥の目の黒いうちはあなたに誰の指一本触れさせたりするものか出てこいベアトリーチェこれで満足か
As he stood guard in front of Jessica, who was using her inhaler and seemed to be in pain, Kanon yelled into the empty air. Oh, you can barely see it. Yeah, but there we go. Like the golden butterflies are inverted. Oh, that's fucking cool. And when he did, the empty air did indeed laugh back, satisfied. Cool. Then she showed herself. It wasn't in response to Kanon's demand. It was obviously because appearing and sneering would bring them even more humiliation, and plus, it was more fun.
これで全ては筋書き通りよ。今やそなたは草上の恋よな。いや、二人が揃ったのだから、カモとネギと呼ぶべきか。
Oh my god. In case you don't know, a duck with green onions. That's an expression used in Japan basically to mean like something free for the most part. Like the expression is like, imagine you find a duck out in the wild and it has a green onion with it, which means that it's basically ready to be served as a dish. So that's pretty fucked up of her. Oh my god.
お下がりくださいお嬢様僕が守る
姫に騎士が揃わば魔女が現れるのは必然よ。どれ金蔵の家具がどの程度の力を持つか見せてもらおうではないか。
Yeah, that's where Farfetch from Pokemon comes. He's a duck with a leak. So that's kind of like the joke with him. She snapped her fingers with a piercing sound. When she did, a blizzard of gold butterflies was stirred up, and they began to form a small mountain as they whirled around in a circle. But what is that background? Is that one of the wings from the golden eagle? Or, well, like one of the feathers from it, I wonder? It was just like a swirling of a cold, wintry wind that builds up a mountain of leaves. From that mound of gold, a hand sprouted, and it appeared, as though a resident of the world below was crawling up from the ground beneath. Excuse me?
なんだよこれ。
Jessica couldn't comprehend what she was seeing right now, and her mouth kept flapping open and closed. It was the bite of wisdom, seen in those in those trying to understand something incomprehensible. I'm sitting up to see if I can look better, but obviously the face is being like covered up. This is not a human as far as I can tell. Here, let me see if I can show you what I mean. Because I know we're all dying of anticipation, right? But just so you're also on the same page as I, and you can kind of get a better view of it. You can kind of see the eyes a little bit, unless it's just my hallucination. And yeah, you can see the eyes as well. They're like right. They're like right here. You can kind of see them if I put them next to it. Do you see it better? Like if you squint your eyes, are you able to see it a little bit better? But there you can kind of tell where the eyes are supposed to be positioned. But yeah, so this is a servant. Let's see if they appear here. They do not. So this is a servant of some kind. Now the thing is, they have what appears to be the head of a dog, but then there's also like the neck of a human. And the crest is also different. Like for example, Genji. It's almost like they're using Genji's body sprite a little bit. Just like the shape, but it's not Genji's body. It's a lighter shade as well. Actually, it might be Golda. They might be using Golda's, like, body sprite. And then just kind of modifying it a little bit. But anyway. That thing crawling up was probably an attendant who served the witch. It appeared to be wearing a uniform suitable for one who served. But its face was wrong. It looked strange. It was covered with pitch black hair, breathing rotten breath, and its eyes were filled with the same strange subterranean glow as lava. And to symbolize its non-human status, it had two horns. It was the figure of a goat-faced attendant who served the witch. By now, Jessica had no idea what she should say. All this happening in front of her couldn't be explained with common sense, and she couldn't do anything except open and close her mouth. Jessica hadn't realized it. She hadn't realized that this island had already been cut off from the rules of our world. But there were some things that even she could understand. This goat attendant served the witch, and was after her life. And apparently the witch had already given it the order. She was looking at Kanun with an expectant gaze. She looked at him with an expectant and therefore challenging gaze, as though asking him how he intended to protect his maiden. Though the attendant had looked especially bestial while crawling to its feet, you could see it in the way it carried itself that it possessed more than enough grace to be worthy of serving the Golden Witch. And you could tell that it was overflowing with the joy of furniture wanting to meet its master's expectations.
見せてもらおうではないか。金蔵の家具の力を。今度は間違えるの？家具であることを忘れるな。この後に及んで人間のふりを続けるのなら、死ぬのはお前だけでは済まぬぞ。
The goat attendant made what seemed to be a silent, respectful bow. Was it directed at its master, or was it offered to Kanon as its opponent? Offered to Kanon, its opponent. Then, on the attendant's hand, a blade of wicked malice appeared. Jessica had been unable to understand what was happening before her eyes for a while now. All she understood was that this glow in front of her existed for the purpose of ending her life. And right now, that was enough. Kanon spoke quietly to Jessica, who was hiding behind his back.
お嬢様、壁に下がっていてください。背中は決して壁から離さないように。
姫君はおとなしく騎士殿の背中に隠れているがいい。自らの命を男に守らせる醍醐味でも存分に味わえばよい。さあカノン、お前の刃を見せてみよ。美しい。金蔵は家具を生み出すことに関してだけはわらわの足元に及ぶやもしれぬ。
こんなものバラの手入れにも使えない。カノン君、それは見せたくなかった。
よくぞ抜いたぞ。思いを寄せる女の前で己が人間以下の存在であることを晒した気分はどんな。
黙れ。
憤怒で己を焦がしているくせに冷静。なるほど。真に熱き炎は青く静かだという。今のそなたがそうだというのか。
僕の力でお前を殺すことなどできるわけもない。お前は月、石つぶてを投げたとて月を砕くことなどできるわけだが、お前は権限するために水面にその姿を映す。水面に石つぶてを投じれば一時月を乱すこともできるかもしれない。しかし月を砕くことなど至らない。だから僕はこの命尽きるまでお前の映る水面を叩き続けてやる。
気に入ったぞカノン。始めろ家具ども。ほう、美しい奇跡だ。
Witch's words of admiration broke the silence, and just for an instant they broke Jessica's paralysis.
私は夢を見てるの？
来い、魔女の家具め。元来た地獄へ叩き落としてやる。
Also, if you look carefully, you're able to see the goat's ear and part of its horn near the top left. So I'll leave that for you if you want to pause, but we'll keep going. And for those of you on Twitch, you're about to get an ad, so we'll stop for a second. But man, what's going on right now is kind of insane. Now, I did mention this at the start of the playthrough, that my only exposure to Umineko had been specifically some sprites to the fighting game from ages ago. I won't go too much into it. The only thing I will mention is that Kanon's sprite, his idle animation, like when he's standing still, has that blade out. And that was one of the images that I did remember. Like, I remember the sprite for Beatrice a little bit. If I recall, she's like floating, and she has her cane next to her a little bit. But Kanon is holding, you know, his blade. He has his arm kind of like in an L shape in front of his stomach, and then he's got the blade out. So the second I saw the blade come out of the goat dude, out of his hand, I was like, no way is Kanon about to, and then he does it. And that was pretty insane. Gota? Yeah, what if this guy is a goat? And gotcha. Okay, so this track is called Moon. That's very appropriate. I mean, that's you know, that's just Ryukishi being, you know, picking his songs correctly for moments like these, I suppose. But anyway, a strand of red had been left on Kanon's cheek. The witch saw this and grinned broadly.
勘が戻らぬことを言い訳につぶやいてもよいぞ。
カノン君、しっかり。
And this is another sprite that we haven't seen of Jessica. She's like crying, but her mouth is open. That's weird. That's an interesting sprite.
大丈夫。僕はまだ死なない。
Oh no. The curve drawn by the goat attendant's blade drew a large arc in empty space. Kanon wasn't there. He was behind it.
先に帰りて。主の帰りを待つがいい。行け。
He hit him with the nothing personnel, kid? What? You should, like, if I would stream with a webcam, my face during that moment, the second he popped up behind him, I was like, no way. And then he does it. Nothing personnel, kid. If this battle of drawing sparkling curves was chess, then Kanon coming from behind was check. And press and press and press and press. Use 7 moves and make it mate. Perhaps the goat attendant hadn't even been granted the ability to go into death rows. As its knees buckled and it fell over, it broke into a bunch of gold butterflies with a pop. So there was no sound of it hitting the ground. Even those unable to understand this battle would surely realize that Kanon had been magnificent.
ハンドメイドには勝てぬか。そこまで見下げたものではないらしい。
次はお前だ。ベアトリーチェ
The instant cannon's blade sliced diagonally through the witch's form like a knife through butter. She turned gold and burst. She scattered into several thousand gold butterflies, and just for an instant, the room was filled with the color of twilight. It was just as Kanon himself had said. Slicing Beatrice was just the same as slicing the surface of the water. I accidentally skipped ahead a little bit too much. sorry, slicing Beatrice was just the same as slicing through the surface of the water where the moon was reflected. The witch's form, with an ordinary expression on its face, as though she'd been there the whole time, was right behind Kanon.
十分に面白い見せ物であったぞ。それに免じ見逃してやろうかと思ったが、今の無礼で気が変わった。
嘘をつくな。お前にお嬢様を殺させはしない。たとえそれが無理でも僕より先に殺させはしない。
お前にはそれすらできぬわ。喋るな家具が、無口であれ家具が、身の程を知れ家具が。
カノン君は家具なんかじゃない。
ほう、なぜそう言えるのか。
理由なんかいらない。カノン君はカノン君だよ。本当の名前は別にあるけれど、それでも名前は家具じゃない。カノン君にはカノン君の生き方がある。それはとても高潔なもので、自らが決めるもの。家具だから意見しちゃいけないとか、家具だから自分の人生を持っちゃいけないとか、そんなのないよ。お嬢様、あいつを挑発してはいけません。はっきり言っておくぜ。カノン君は家具じゃない。人間だよ。どうして？カノン君は自分の意志で私を助けに駆けつけてくれた。そして恐ろしい魔女であるあんたの前に立ちはだかってくれた。私を見捨てることなんていくらでもできただろうに、そうしなかった。自己犠牲は人間だけが持つ高潔な精神だ。だからカノン君は人間なんだ。だから訂正しろ。カノン君を家具だなんて呼ぶな、二度と。お嬢様。
語るな人間が。とっとと終わらせよう。何しろまだまだ第二の番。互いの尊厳を認め合う寄り添いし二人を今こそ生贄に捧げよ。
Here you can see that they're reusing the little background that we just had with the goat person, which is really funny. Also, wait. You can barely see it, but there's like a blue butterfly right by Beatrice. Let me see if I can show you. It's right here by her pipe. It's either a butterfly or it's like the shadow of the couch cushion, or like the corner of the couch itself where the seat meets like the back. Although I doubt it. It really does look more like a butterfly. Yeah, it's actually a few butterflies. It's one at the bottom and then one above. They're flapping their wings, or they're mid flap, I guess. I wonder why they're there specifically, but not anywhere else. They're not behind her. They're not by her, like by her arms. They're not by that little white thing to the bottom right. So,
さあさあおいでなさい。罪を許しなさい。煉獄の七杭が一つ。色欲。
The witch summoned her furniture with a mixture of laughter and anger on her face.
色欲のアスモデウス。
Huh? Eh?
ここに。
茶番は飽きた。第二の番を速やかに遂行せよ。わらわに瞬きを三つも許。
仰せのままに。
また なのが出やがったぜ。
Canon, you can't say that. It took Canon less than an instant to understand. That goat face from a second ago had been nothing more than a pawn to the witch. However, this newly summoned furniture was a game piece with a vastly different value.
素敵な獲物に恵まれるなんて怯えてる？かわいい。
来い、魔女の家具。お前には殺されない。
私の姿を追うこともできないノロマのくせに生きがって行くわよ。ねえねえ、どこがいい？どこを貫いてほしい？お答えなさいよ、かわいい子。あなたの好きなところを思い切り貫いてあげる。さあさあ、お答えなさいよ、かわいい子。
僕を可愛いと言うな。
I'm not cute.
行くわよ、ノルマ。さあ追ってごらん、その節穴で。
お嬢様。
Right in the forehead.
目では追えなかったけどよ、読みは当てたぜ。さあまあ、見やがれ。
Canon's back had been the target. Oh, never mind. But Jessica had predicted it. She predicted that the witch's target would be the complete opposite of fair and honest, his back. But she had no way to block it. She hadn't planned on it being some act of self-sacrifice. She just couldn't think of any other way to protect Canon's back. So, she could do nothing but block it with her own back. The furniture of the witch, which had changed its form into a demon's stake, was buried deep into Jessica's back. It was an obviously fatal wound that reached as far as her lungs. When she saw this, the witch let out a loud and evil laugh, because it had hit where the witch had predicted. Everything was as the witch had predicted.
どうしたカノン？ジェシカお嬢様はお前より先には殺されなかったんじゃないのか？そうそう、それそれ、その顔よ。お前のその顔が見たかった。楽しんだ、実に十分。もうよい、死ね死ね、笑わせろ。さあさあおいでなさい、罪を許しなさい。煉獄の七杭が一つ。フンド。
フンドのサタン、ここに。
その獲物はお前のものだ。今すぐ食らってこやつの舞台に幕を下ろしてやれ。人ならば交番とも言おうが、家具のお前の場合は大道具係が舞台裏に運び出すといったところか。
僕はもう家具じゃない。そしてそれを二度と疑わない。
なーに？あんたまた私に殺されちゃうの？あんたの胸温かくて本当に貫くと気持ちがいいのよ。さあまた味合わせて。あなたの温かい胸の中で
熱い熱い血潮で私を思いっきり気持ちよくして。
There was no way to block it. The sound of a woodpecker filled the entire room. And before he could blink, it was already right in the center of his chest. When you take a piece in chess, the rules say that it is impossible for your opponent's piece to defend itself. So this was an obvious result, in accordance with the rules. Kanon landed on his knees, and he apologized. Not to the witch, and not to Milady. He apologized to Jessica.
ごめん。守りきれなかった。
気にしないで。かっこよかったよ。
Kanon finally fell over. He landed next to Jessica, and the two lay there like the constellation Gemini.
カノン君はさ、もう家具じゃないよ。
はい。それに気づくのが遅すぎた。
君の本当の名前聞きたかった。
僕の本当の名前は
In his last moments, Kanon wanted to tell her his real name. But Jessica had already fallen into a sleep from which she would never awake. So Kanon's real name, which he had protected until today, in the end, he couldn't tell it to Jessica.
僕は人間になれ
Those were the last words Kanon left behind.
"笑わせるな家具が。100年を経ようと家具は家具よ。捨てる時に家具のために墓穴を掘るバカがどこにいる？家具は叩き割って薪にして、後には灰しか残らぬわ。そういうことよ。家具に刻める墓碑などない。貴様は死ねばこれ以上の屈辱を受けることがないと信じてるようだが、死者を恥ずかしめるというのがどういうものか。
After taking a puff from her pipe, the witch breathed the smoke at Kanon's corpse. Oh my god. She teabagged him in death. When she did, Kanon's corpse softly floated up in the air and disappeared as though it had been eaten by a mouth in empty space. The witch played dirty until the very end. The corpse of the pair who managed to understand each other in the end were not even permitted to be close. If someone had been watching, they would probably say mournfully, "So this is what you meant by disgracing the dead." However, Beatrice was far crueler than that. The reason for that would soon become apparent. Okay, so now we're going back in time. So this whole scene took almost an hour to play out.
そうか。始まったか。
And actually, Kinzo, it is now come to an end, as this would be a pretty good stopping point for tonight. So let's get ready to swap on over to the ending screen.